In this video, the first of the Lesson 5 videos, we're going to learn the basics of working with functions. And we will be using the data file called functions from your spreadsheet, which I already have open here. So let me get mine closed so that it allows me to open it. And let's try that again. Functions, and it looks like this, and this is one that you're definitely going to want to save. In this video we're going to set up all of these pieces right here, and then in the next video you're going to learn about the financial functions. So in working with formulas so far, you've learned how to do some simple add, average, count, max, min features. We're going to practice those again using the sum features, or you've just manually added some cells together and created your own formula. But in this particular spreadsheet we're going to learn about the wealth of formulas that are available to you in the different categories. And before we actually create or work with anything, we're going to take a peek at this function button together. And how this works is you have yours probably defaults open to most recently used, and because you have not done as many things as I've been practicing here, you're probably seeing the sum and the average and the max, the min and the count listed as different kinds of options. We are going to begin today by working in the math and trig section. And so let's come there, and when we open that category for the different kinds of formulas that you might be creating for under the math and trigonometry functions, and you scroll down, you can see a whole bunch of different kinds of formulas that you can use that fall into that category. And I won't be able to teach you how to do some of the advanced features in each of these areas, but I can show you where the formula exists, and then whatever option you're looking at, it always gives you a little snapshot of the kind of function you're doing and the pieces of data that you'll have to pull into that particular function. Also, there's a statistical area, and this is where you're going to see a lot of, the average and the count, and some of these kinds, max and min is available in this area, quartile, RSQ, some of these standard deviations. Those of you who have taken statistics will be familiar with some of the abbreviations for the formulas for that. We have, for those of you who have taken some Project Lead the Way courses, there are engineering formulas that exist here, and because I'm not certain of the curriculum you cover there, you may or may not have used some of these formulas, but they exist for you there. And then we are also going to practice together the date and time formulas, the text formulas, and we'll look briefly at the logical formulas. These are basically your if, or if-then statements that you maybe do in either algebra or geometry, and we're going to practice with that in the final video. So to start with today, we are going to begin with just a simple sum. And sum, I know we would not need to look up. By the way, if ever you need to find a formula, you just put what you're looking for, and it's going to give you what it thinks the possible option. And so if I didn't know which category I might find sum under, I could do a search for it and it will come up here. The sum function actually exists in the math and trig area. But before I do this, I need to make sure I always have my cursor where I want my answer to be. And in this case, I want it to be in cell B10. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this range of numbers right here as the range for adding these pieces together. And so I'm going to go back into my function now. I'm going to, in math and trig, because the word sum, I make sure your cursor is highlighted down here under the select a function, and you can type in the alphabet letter of the first name of the function you're looking for. In our case, it's sum. I press an S. It doesn't show up yet, so I keep pressing the letter S, and that'll continue down the list until I get to sum. And now it's going to automatically select a range of cells for you that it thinks you want to add. Well, this isn't correct because it's including cells 8 and 9, which don't have any data in them. So I could manually change this by saying, okay, I want to add B3 through B7, Or I can click on this little red arrow here, which rolls up the window shade. I can click and drag to highlight the range of cells I want to use, reopen my window shade, and actually I would have needed to clear out that other stuff. So let me start over. I'm going to start from scratch. So I want to select the cells I want to add. I come here, I select that range, and there it is. I'm happy with that range of cells. I'm seeing the answer right here. I'm going to click on OK, and there it is. Now, the next math function we're going to practice is finding the square root of this cell. Now, I know you could get your calculator out, punch it in, boom, you'd have your answer, type it in. But in case any of this data changes, everything always snowballs, so it's best to use a formula. The square root formula is once again available in the math and trig function. It's abbreviated SQRT. So since it starts with an S, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have my cursor selected in the select a function area. Keep pressing the S until I get to SQRT, which is right there. And it's saying, what do you want to find the square root of? Now I could manually type the number in and it would give it to me, but I want to, just in case, because I already added these numbers together, if they change, that's going to change my sum. So instead I want to select the cell where I want the square root to be found. So I roll the window shade up, I select that cell, I'm seeing my answer right there, and I'm going to go ahead and leave all of those decimal places in place for the time being here. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to say I want to round the contents of cell B11 to only 2 decimal places. Well, rather than manually typing it in, I'm going to use a round function. And so I come down here, still in math and trig, I press R until I get to round. I select round, and I'm going to tell it I want to round this cell B11, to 2 decimal places. And there it is. So there's another. And with each of these, as we look above, you can see the formula that you used in order to get those particular answers. Now, I'm going to go ahead and practice a bunch from the stats function. I'm going to practice an average, a count, a max, a min, a standard deviation, and a variance. So all of these are available now within the statistical category of my functions. So rather than choosing math and trig, this time I'm going to choose statistical, and I'm going to start with average. Since that's a letter A, it just so happens it pops up for me right here without having to search for anything. I could have also found the average function in this drop down here, which is just some of the simple functions that you can do, but since we're practicing using the function button, I'll come back here and I'll choose average. Now with these next 6 formulas we're going to create, we're going to always use the range of cells B3 to B7 to find our answers. So I'll click on OK, and you'll see that the default it looks what's the nearest cells with numbers, and it chose the incorrect one. So I'm going to click on the red arrow. I'm going to go back and re-highlight the range of cells I want to find my average of. I'm going to have that now correctly in here. I could manually type it in, but as I'm being a broken record here, I always like to click right in the spreadsheet because then I know I haven't made a mistake. I'm going to click on OK, and there's my average. Now with the average selected, if once again I don't want to have any decimal places, I can decrease, and that would round it. Or if it doesn't matter to me, I can even increase it to a couple of decimal places. The next thing I'm going to do is a count, and I realize I can easily count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Type in the number 5, it looks like I've done it correctly. But if I had hundreds of cells that I wanted to figure out how many had data in, that would be a time saver to use a count formula. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Once again, we're still in the statistical category, so I'm going to press the letter C for count because we want to count the number of cells. Get to my count, click on OK, and once again it's chosen the wrong cell to count. So I'm going to roll up my window shade, re-highlight the range of cells B3 through B7, open my window shade. It tells me the answer right here. So yes, I manually counted them. But if I added some rows, if I took away some rows, this formula would automatically recalculate for me. Now, the largest and the smallest number, the functions are max and min, maximum, minimum. So those are the next two functions I'm going to practice within the statistical category. They're both m's. The first one, max, for the largest number is there. Click on OK. Once again, because you are all extremely bright students, you would look at that and say, well, I'll just type in 722 because I can see that's the biggest. But once again, what if you had a giant spreadsheet? This would be a time saver if you needed to know the biggest number or the maximum number. So I highlight the range again, and it tells me that I'm a pretty good analyzer so far on my own, but I'm going to make sure I have a formula just in case something changes. Next thing I'm going to practice is minimum. And so go ahead and put your cursor in the cell where you want the answer to be. We'll go into the function slot. This time we're going to go to the m's again, but we're going to have to keep looking because we need min, or minimum. Okay, so I'm going to do that. Once again, it chose the wrong range of cells because I want B3 through B7. I'll re-highlight those, click on OK. The next one that we're going to do is the standard deviation of this range of cells. That function is STDEV. But once again, if I forgot, I could just type it in the search box, and it would find a whole bunch of different kinds of functions that use that standard deviation. We're doing the simplest one, STDEV. So if I knew that, I could also look for that within the statistical category to find it. So I'm going to choose standard deviation, and I want it of this same range of cells, B3 through B7. So there it is, and you can see it's grabbing all the numbers, and this is going to be my answer. I'm going to go ahead and just leave the decimal places as is, but I could easily change them right here. And the final function I'm going to find is the variance, and that function is, and I'm going to get back to statistical now, is VAR. And that happens to be the first one that pops up when I press a letter V. But I click on OK, and again grab the correct range of cells, B3 through B7, and there it is. If I needed to change decimals, I certainly could. Now, in your book on page 112 is a table that shows samples of these same formulas that we've just created. Please save this spreadsheet to your directory. We are going to use it for the next video where we work with financial functions, and it'll be explained what's happening there with those features. So you'll definitely want this saved also so that you can have it as a reminder of how to do the various formulas when it's time to create them when you're working on your own. So that ends this video of learning the basic math